The pioneering spirit is nothing new to agriculture, as innovation has made farming in America the most productive and technologically advanced in the world. Yet, tomorrow will present a new set of challenges that'll require new ideas, inventions, and innovations. That is what Farm Next is all about, showing you the future of farming. From autonomous robots to cutting-edge digital tools to better ways to fertilize your crops and increase soil health, this program will give you a glimpse of the exciting future agriculture has in store. Stay tuned to see what's next on Farm Next.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Farm Next. I'm Max Armstrong, and I'm thrilled to be a part of giving you a front row seat into what's next in the world of agriculture. Before we get to what's next, let's talk about a transformational technology that's here right now, microbes that can replace nitrogen fertilizer. Not that many years ago, the co-founders of Pivot Bio dreamed of creating a better way to provide nitrogen to crops. And like the inventors you'll hear from today, they dedicated time, effort, and capital to turn their dream into a reality. Today, Pivot Bio's products deliver nitrogen to corn, wheat, and sorghum and have been used by farmers across the country. Pivot Bio knows just how challenging it is to transform an idea into a product and to get it into the hands of farmers. So Pivot Bio, together with Farm Progress, scoured the country and found 10 entrepreneurs with the potential to be that next big idea for the future of agriculture. Each of these companies is vying for a chance to showcase their idea at this year's Farm Progress Show in Boone, Iowa. In each episode, you'll see these cutting-edge innovations in action. You'll meet the brilliant minds behind each idea, and you'll learn more as each participant presents their ideas to leaders in investing, agribusiness, and farming. And you, our audience, can vote live during the show whether you think each idea has what it takes to appear at the Farm Progress Show. You'll do that by going to pivotbio.com/vote. There you can enter to win a VIP package to the Farm Progress Show. In today's episode, we take a look at Verge Ag. Verge Ag is a startup that has developed a digital tool to help farmers manage their land and equipment and improve productivity on the farm. By focusing on the cohesive movement of equipment in the field, Verge Ag is enabling growers to run more sustainable and profitable operations. Stay tuned to learn about Verge Ag. But first, here's a short video about Pivot Bio. Take a look.
6:45 in the morning with a chance of showers.
Farmers have always taken care of what they value. Through hard work and resilience, they cultivated bountiful land. As the country grew, great revelations led to a green revolution, one that helped feed the world. Then it happened. Fewer hands worked the land, while more lived off it. Yet farmers took on the challenge. They pivoted, improved, and fed a nation hungry for progress. As Americans dialed up, farmers dialed in. Precision on the farm led to yields once thought impossible. But when it came to nitrogen, it wasn't precise or predictable enough. Not for the farmer, the crop, nor the environment. Today, Pivot Bio provides a better way to deliver a more dependable and productive nitrogen in the field, while giving growers a new tool to take care of what matters most. Farmers deserve a nitrogen worthy of who they are and what their land can provide. And now there is one. It's time to turn to a better nitrogen.
Welcome back here to Farm Next. It's the show that gives you a front row seat into what's next in the world of agriculture. Coming up in today's episode, we'll take a look at Verge Ag. Verge Ag is a startup that developed a digital tool to help farmers manage their land and equipment and therefore improve productivity on the farm. Before we meet Ryan Johnson, the CEO of Verge Ag, here's a short video about the company from the field. Please take a look.
I'm Godard. I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer at Verge Ag. The idea for Launchpad came from working with the farmers to understand how they implement their field operations and how important is it to evaluate both field and equipment as it relates to the execution of that field operation. Right now, there isn't any software or a solution available to the farmer to really manage their land and equipment efficiently, to have some kind of control over how much inputs they're putting down or how they're traveling in the field. So we wanted to develop a solution that could really make the best use of the equipment that the farmer is purchasing. So when they're spending that much money to buy that equipment, how do we make sure that it is staying productive? Launchpad is the only interactive planning experience ever made. It allows farmers to plan, simulate, and validate the movement of their equipment and execute field operations efficiently. Our software is super simple to use. They log in, they see their field boundaries, they click, they create a plan. They want to select a bunch of fields, click that, create a plan, review it, share it with their operators. Everything is within their control. We've got controls like sliders that allow them to quickly change the direction of the equipment, and then you see the paths change. Showing a farmer their own field and showing how the equipment moves in that field. And when they're able to visualize that and they're able to control and change the path of that equipment and see the impact it has in terms of how much time you spend in the field, how many passes you have, what's your non-working time, where are the inefficiencies. Being able to visualize that and have control to change that, we're helping them with information that they can take action on. 95% of all farm revenue goes towards some of the big expenses like seed, chem, fertilizer, and the use of equipment. 50% of all agriculture emissions come from fertilizer, fuel, and machinery use. So you've got an income crisis that's driving a climate crisis, and there needs to be a solution, which is how do we get more money in the hands of the farmer, which is really around efficiencies to improve their net income, which becomes a solution for this climate crisis. Every year there's some kind of automation technologies happening. Our goal is to allow the farmers to make the best use of that technology as it relates to their field. So step by step, we are helping them accelerate that transition to autonomous farming, that they're ready to adopt it. Looking ahead into the future, what we are most excited about is growth through market-driven innovation. We don't want to develop a software that provides value 20 years from now. We want to develop software that provides value today and impacts the farmer's life today.
Up now on Farm Next, Ryan Johnson, who is the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Verge Ag. Ryan, welcome to the studio here.
Well, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
From Alberta.
Yes.
Right?
Yep, grew up there.
You have a tie to the University of Lethbridge?
Yep, so I graduated from there, did my master's there. Yep, had a fun time.
Tell us about Verge Ag. What were you trying to address as you started this with Goddard?
Well, it actually, maybe start with a little bit of background. So Goddard and I had worked together for years before we started Verge, and we knew we wanted to work together again. So we sort of got the team together before we knew what we were going to do. Our past business was satellite imagery, and really where we saw the most value was around agriculture and the environment. So we knew we wanted to get back into that, and we looked at a bunch of different opportunities before we figured out the opportunity around Verge and optimizing the routes that vehicles take in the field.
I often ask this question of innovators, entrepreneurs. Was there that light bulb moment when all of a sudden the two of you realized, we have something here?
Yeah, there was actually. So I was probably the biggest naysayer around the opportunity when we first looked at it, because with auto steer, I thought that path planning was a solved problem. It wasn't until we actually started to deal directly with farmers and watch them use our application and everybody leaned in, and then listening to what they were saying about how they could improve their existing plans, then it really went, we've got something here. So
you'll be bringing more efficiency to the field. That's the idea.
It is, yes. So the number of variables that the farmer's trying to solve for at the same time, every time they enter the field, is very complicated. And for each different operation, there's different things they're solving for. So during seeding, they might try to minimize compaction of the soil and minimize soil erosion. But at harvest, they want to get it harvested as quickly as they can because there's a snow event coming. So there's a huge number of variables they're solving every time they enter the field. And we're trying to give them the tools so that they can make decisions themselves.
There's a lot of stuff in the cab now. There are a lot of screens in some of these cabs, and there's a little bit of a learning curve. How is the ease of use with your product?
It was a huge part of what our team worked on, is having a product that didn't want to have another monitor in the cab. We can upload our plans to any monitor. But really a tool that's super intuitive. You can come in to begin with, there's easy sliders. It's really sort of fun to play with right out of the gate. But then you can immediately see the changes, and then we can quantify the benefits for you right on the bottom of the screen.
What have you heard from the farmers who've tried it? What kind of feedback have you gotten, Ryan?
Quite positive. We've had farmers that were, a little standoffish at the beginning and said, well, we've done it this way forever. So, we know what we're doing. And so, they adjust things a little bit, and they're pretty excited. And in different parts of the world, like, Brazil, we have lots of customers in Brazil today, where path planning is really part of the culture. They immediately understood it and jumped sort of past the first parts into some pretty hard questions we got right out of the gate, and curve paths and so forth. So it's sort of a different experience every part of the world, depending on what they're dealing with.
So you truly are global with Verge Ag.
That was part of it. The benefit that we bring to each farm is important for the farm, but really what we want to have is, we believe that the overall benefit of the company has to be global in scale. And so we wanted to have a product that we knew we could take to market, that we could scale globally. And really, if we want to have the impact that we want to have, it has to be a globally used product.
Some of the things we've been talking about on Farm Next also address environmental concerns and help the farmer do so. Could that be said of Verge Ag?
Absolutely. So we're not making decisions for the farmer. We're basically giving the farmers the tool to make those decisions. And we've learned this over many years, that really local knowledge is what's so key. Each farmer is the best steward of their land. So whether they're trying to manage soil erosion or compaction or whatever they're optimizing for, they're making the best decision for themselves. And it's really those small cumulative effects add up to really be a huge benefit at the end of the day.
I can tell you're passionate about the product, by all means.
Yes.
You have to be, don't you?
Yes.
Well, we wish you the best, sir. Thank you for spending the time here with us to fill in a little bit of the detail on Verge Ag.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, that's Ryan Johnson joining us here. Now that we've learned how Verge Ag got to where they are today, our panel will scope out where the company could be heading next when we return after these brief messages on Farm Next.
Pivot Bio is changing the way we grow our food.
Every plant on this planet needs sun, water, and nitrogen.
Nitrogen is the fourth most abundant element in any living organism.
Everything the plant needs, everything the plant produces, contains nitrogen.
About 100 years ago, we had a growing population, we had the need to grow more food. We realized that by producing nitrogen fertilizer in gigantic centralized factories, we could then distribute it to all of these farms.
We've been able to feed a growing population simply because we are able to produce nitrogen and deliver it to crops.
But we're now starting to see a lot of the really detrimental effect on our environment.
It's a process entirely dependent on fossil fuels.
It consumes a huge quantity of carbon and releases that into the atmosphere just to make the nitrogen that you have in the fertilizer.
As a farmer, fertilizer can be one of the biggest headaches. Fertilizer can be both expensive and also inconsistent in performance. Only about half of the fertilizer that gets applied to a field ends up being fuel for a crop. The rest is lost to the environment.
And that can pollute the water, can even volatilize into the air and create greenhouse gas emission as well.
So we have these inherent inefficiencies that make it challenging for every farmer to generate enough food for the planet. And we can do better.
Pivot Bio is a nitrogen innovator because it's a new way for us to help farmers fertilize their crops reliably.
Pivot is leading the charge in being able to produce nitrogen on demand, to spoon feed it to the crop on a daily basis.
We are the pioneers of a nitrogen-producing microbe that can be delivered at scale to farmers that is providing an alternative to synthetic fertilizer.
We've built a disruptive product. It changes everything. It's in use across millions of acres today.
It's always there. It's always working. You can count on it.
I know that nitrogen is going to be there. That's where there's a really neat play with farmers. You get to marry both the economics as a farmer and the environmental side of things.
The potential of this technology is limitless. What we're doing here can change agriculture as we know it.
Fertilizer has been the cutting edge technology for the last 100 years. It's hit a limit. At Pivot, we've innovated the nitrogen that will power the next 100 years of agriculture.
Welcome back here to Farm Next, and we're now on to the final portion of today's program. It's our panel discussion. Let me introduce the panelists to you. First of all is Karsten Temme, who is an entrepreneur and engineer, and he's the CEO and co-founder of Pivot Bio. Tom Carlson, who is an investor. He's a founding partner of the Rural American Fund, a private equity firm headquartered in Chicago. And yes, indeed, we have a farmer here, Lisa Peterson, third-generation farmer, former national president of the FFA organization, and she's from Osage, Iowa. Karsten, we're going to talk with you to begin with, but first of all, lay out your rationale for wanting to be a part of something like this. Why are you excited about this?
Well, this is a great chance for us to be able to connect entrepreneur to entrepreneur and talk about how there are problems we can solve with new ideas and new innovations. And for me, being able to bring those two together is what it's all about. So looking forward to the conversation.
Tom, your work over the years, you've worked with a lot of companies coming forward with products for agriculture. Some of those input-related companies, as I recall, you've helped finance.
Absolutely. We've looked at a lot of different companies, and Verge is interesting to me. We've seen a number of people with innovative ideas and technology, and it's a very interesting space, and it's an area where there's a lot of value-add opportunities in agriculture.
Lisa, from that standpoint of one who runs a farm, you're in the cab, you're at the desk in the office, you'll have a lot of questions, no doubt, as you bring to the table here. Your farming operation is not far from the Minnesota state line, the northeast part of Iowa, as I recall.
That is correct, Max. And that's the fun part about today is, you know, Carson's really at the beginning of the project, and that's where his expertise lays, and I'm the end user of all the technologies that we're getting to expose and talk about on Farm Next.
Well, Karsten Ryan has something very interesting here at Verge Ag. We'll allow you to lead off the questioning.
Well, thanks a ton, and I think earlier in the show we got to hear about all of the value you've helped create so far. Can you walk us through a bit more on what comes next? Where do you see building beyond what the software does today?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. So today we have a very easy to use interface for our customers. And the more farmers that we're dealing with, we're learning more and more about their requirements. And so we've got a big vision for the future around what we want to have at some point with the Jetsons farm and the autonomous future. But for this to work, we have to be building value at each stage along the way, or we won't see the transformation happen. So what we're really learning is that farm operations, location to location, are so different. And we're seeing different demands coming from farmers in Alberta or here, or Brazil. So it's quite interesting to see how different farming practices are in different parts of the world. So trying to capture those and bring those into the application is the next step.
So what would you view as your ideal customer? Who are you looking, who would be the quickest to adopt your technology?
I think to date, the quickest is really farms that have a lot of operations they need to optimize. When we were first here, I thought that the business would all be around like me proving to you I save this much fuel or those types of things. When we started to work with customers, they came back and it was all about time. So that was the first real learning that I got, was time is what matters more than anything else. Mm-hmm. And that was really quite interesting. So when we deal with farmers in Canada and the US, it's really around those types of problems we're solving. But as we go into different geographies, like Brazil, for example, erosion is something that they're very concerned about, and curved paths. So we're solving a different problem initially with them. So it's sort of a different initial problem set depending where we are in the world.
Do you find a size? Is there a size of the operation that you best fit with?
Not really a size. I think there's a technology level that the farm has to have more than size, because we're providing value per field. So like you can have one field and we can still provide some level of value. But you have to have GPS and auto steer, or our technology's not applicable. So it's really a technology base that we need with a farmer.
So as the investor / finance guy here, I've got to go in the direction of numbers question.
Right.
So when you look at the product, it seems to be one piece, because when we've seen other software businesses, it's sort of family of products that go into a given area. Do you have a business plan that you've put together for that expansion? And do you have a business plan showing this product rolling out into the market at this point?
Yeah, so of course we've written all of those grand, what we will be tomorrow. But, I've got a lot more gray hair than I think a lot of young entrepreneurs have. And so we have to do one thing really well. And that's what we need to do, is to capture as many users with our product today, solving one problem, and then we can add more and more features. And the way we've done that is we've brought in some very great partners, investors into the company. So the first investor in the company was Fall Line. And Fall Line's a unique venture capitalist firm because they own and operate farmland on the one hand, and then they invest in a company like ours on the other. So that was really important to have them come in, because they're very generous and let us talk to all their farm managers and so forth. So bringing that knowledge in and that type of investor was key. And then as we started to expand, we brought in other VC partners from different parts of the world that brought in that regional knowledge. So Yamaha led our last round, and they've got a global reach. But we've got SPV out of Brazil, so we have knowledge of a huge market for us, and then Artesian out of Australia. So that was a really important part about how we would expand into those markets. But then to also de-risk it, we're working with some great funders in Canada. So we've got the Digital Supercluster is funding some of the hard tech that we're doing, and Alberta Innovates as well. So we're basically going slow, solving one problem really well, leveraging the right partners and funding sources to do that.
That sounds like a really strategic approach. When we put our fund together, we focus on ag, as Max had mentioned, but we really focused on bringing in a group of investors that were more than money to the table, so that we could have some value add. And I really would endorse that approach. That sounds very logical.
Yeah, smart people. So.
Let me ask one last question.
Sure.
Is this something where it becomes, and this is again a finance guy, is this like an add-on? Because I've been in tractors, I've not done any planting, but there are a lot of screens in there already. Is this a feature that can be added on to like a John Deere software package or something like that, or is it a standalone system?
For sure. So the plan is that we don't want to put any hardware. Hardware is a tricky thing. So we've done a lot of hardware in the past, but we want to stay away from hardware as long as we can.
Okay.
So the plans that we're creating can be pushed into any monitor, irrespective of brand.
Okay.
So, and now with John Deere, the user interface is very seamless in terms of bringing your data in, making a plan, and pushing it back out to the tractor.
Okay.
Some of the other brands, it's a little bit trickier with some USB sticks.
Excellent. Well, one of the things that I think we've seen in other kinds of software industries is everybody copies everybody else's features. What makes it difficult for somebody to copy what you've done?
Well, I think we're in a little bit of a greenfield space. When we first looked at this, I was probably the biggest naysayer in the company about, is there an opportunity here? There's auto steer, and I thought path planning, like this is a done thing. But the more we spoke about it and the more we investigated and talked to farmers, the more we realized that this was a real problem. So the first thing we did is we pushed out very hard and talked to a bunch of different users before we even had a user interface. We had some algorithms and we went back and forth, and we realized that we were solving a problem, and that was the first big thing that was important. But we did that not just in our backyard. We flew sort of around the world and talked to past partners and so forth to see if this was an unsolved problem in different places. And that was really an important part for us, is that we saw that we could solve a problem today, and then we saw how it could lead to something big in the future. So what drives all of the decisions the farmers are making today is what we refer to as the digital twin of the farm. So the sharing and the use of that data is going to be key, and that's really what will become sort of the platform for our business into the future.
Okay, so I have to ask that, being the farmer on the panel,
Yes.
What is the cost at the grower level?
So we're charging on a per acre basis, and then depending on the term of your subscription, the price adjusts based off of that. So today in the US, it's 50 cents an acre on a 3-year contract.
Excellent, thank you.
You talked about the digital twin of the farm, and it seems like that idea is something a lot of software companies are shooting for. How competitive is the battle for that digital twin, and
huge.
How do we sort this out?
It's a big one, but So our past life was satellite imagery, and we went down trying to figure out a lot of the downstream applications because everybody thinks, well, that's where the opportunity and the money is. But those are incredibly hard. So you have to have so much local knowledge and local relationships to actually do that. And we've seen a lot of big companies, I think, fumble around that. So the bigger thing is to create the data set and expose that data so that local people that have the local knowledge can make those decisions. So we're smart enough to know that we're not smart enough to go too far down those value chains, but having that data set that can be exposed to many people is the key part. And that's really where we saw a lot of success in the past. The more that we exposed our data and allowed others to build on top of it, it created more and more opportunities for us.
Who ultimately owns that digital twin of the farm?
That's a good question. So each data layer would have a different layer, and obviously the farmer's data is their own. And then we're leveraging basically the farmer decisions that they're making are training our algorithms so that we can make better prediction for a farm that has similar characteristics. So that's how we're leveraging the data. But if you bring other data into the digital twin, then you can basically create the economics that you want around that. So really it's the ability to bring that data together, pre-process it so that it's easy to use is going to be a key thing. And then the economics can be decided layer by layer.
You spoke about the time savings and how important that is. Has that been quantified? Is there an example that you could share of a particular operation and what it meant to that grower?
Sure. So what's nice, and the John Deere example, we can, if you're using Ops Center, we can bring in all your past applied data. We can basically measure the time that it took. And then you can create a simulated plan or actually create a plan and then do it in the field. And we can actually measure the difference in time, or the distance or whatever. We can basically measure and quantify the difference. But we've had farmers come back, and on a 2,500 acre farm, I think they saved like 4 days in harvest.
Seriously?
Yeah, so it was a massive savings for that operator. But each field and each operator will have a different savings, but we can quantify it by field.
Ryan, thank you for being with us. We sure appreciate it, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
And we thank our panelists for their insightful questions. I want to remind you folks out there in the audience, we'd love to know what you think of Verge Ag. So go to this website, pivotbio.com/vote. pivotbio.com/vote. There you can also enter to win a VIP pass to the Farm Progress Show at Boone, Iowa. You can also view other episodes of Farm Next. And finally, make plans to come visit the Farm Next Innovation Tent at the Farm Progress Show. When you map your show, make sure you get to that tent, August 30th through September 1st at Boone, Iowa. That's all the time we have today. Join us next time on Farm Next, the show that gives you a front row seat to what's next to the world of agriculture.
Farm Next has been brought to you by Pivot Bio. Pivot Bio, the nitrogen that stays put, whether or not. Farm Next is produced by 22 Creative Group in association with REL Productions and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. If you'd like more information about Farm Next, please visit pivotbio.com/farmnext.